Hey, right. I'm here today to go through your task sheet and rubric for your first assessment task this term for cultural studies, which is your rituals oral presentation, which you'll be doing virtually from home, just sending the oral presentation to your teacher. So by now you should have gone to Compass and downloaded the Year 8 Cultural Studies assessment task sheet, or you should have at least accessed the learning task. I'm going to go through how you're going to do this research task just to get you set up, and then we'll go from there. So basically your task is that you're going to be focusing on one of these rituals. So you can choose birth and early childhood, death and commemoration, marriage, graduation, or coming of age. And you're going to be researching that ritual and what it means and what it's about, and then also looking at how that ritual is celebrated in 3 different cultural contexts. So you might choose Malaysian culture, you might choose Hindu culture, or you might choose Ethiopian culture, or whatever you pick. So you pick 3 different ones, and you're researching how marriage is celebrated in those cultures, for example, and then looking at what's similar and what's different about them. So what you're going to be doing, the first thing you need to do is choose a ritual from the list below, and you're actually going to email or let your teacher know what ritual you've chosen, just so that we know what you're looking at, so we know how to help you. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to conduct research to find information about your ritual and input that research into a research template, which I will show you at the end of this video. The next thing you're going to do is choose 3 cultural contexts. So like I said, you pick 3 different cultures that you're interested in investigating, and you actually research how this ritual is conducted in those cultures. If you need help with that, just contact your teacher. The last thing you're going to do, and this is sort of something that you're going to be doing ongoing as you research, is compile a bibliography. You're going to prepare some presentation cue cards ready to go for when you record your presentation virtually. And then you're actually going to deliver an audio presentation with accompanying slideshow using Google Slides or Screencast-O-Matic. Now, there will be explanation videos on how to record your voice later on in the process. For now, for the next sort of week or so, all we're worrying about is research though. You're going to check your work against the rubric before you submit, and then finally you'll submit it to your teacher. Here we've got a suggested structure for your slideshow about how you could present your information, and we'll also be providing you with a template that will help you understand what to include in your presentation, but we'll provide that a few weeks from now when we think you're ready to start putting a presentation together. So I guess the next important thing is looking at the rubric and what you're actually going to be graded on. So there's 3 different sections, as you can see down the bottom. The first one is content knowledge, the second one is presentation skills, and the third one is your sourcing and your bibliography. So this content knowledge, this is sort of all about your research and information that you find and the quality of that. The second one is about the oral component, so the voice recordings, the recording of you presenting something just like I am now. And the third one is for your bibliography, which you definitely need to include in your presentation. I'll go through each one. So the first column is the description of your ritual. So this is just the description of your ritual in general. So describing what marriage is, what coming of age rituals are, what birth rituals are, etc. So the first thing is that you describe the ritual. And the second one is that you talk about the origins of the ritual. So how did marriage start? How did coming of age rituals start? How did funerals start? So you try and investigate what it was like in the olden days. The last one is that you explain the evolution of the ritual over time. So you talk about how that has changed and what it's like in the modern day compared to what it was like in the olden days. Okay. Next one is analyzing cultures. So this is talking about what culture you've chosen. So the first one is that you describe the culture. So you just give us a brief description about what that culture is. The next one is that you analyze what these rituals reveal about the culture. So what can we learn about Hindu culture through the way that they celebrate their marriages, for example? The next 2 are quite similar because it's talking about what is similar and what is different. So the comparison component of your rubric talks about you identifying similarities across your 3 cultural contexts. So what is the same across all 3? And then the high expert level of that is actually thinking about why those similarities might exist. So why are these things similar across those contexts? And that's sort of you forming conclusions based on evidence. You might not necessarily find that information through research. The next one is quite similar. So the first one is that you describe the ritual in different contexts in isolation. Now what we mean by that is it's really easy to talk about the differences across the three because those differences will come apparent in the information. What you actually need to do, the next level up, is actually specifically explain on a separate slide what those differences are. And then similar to the last one, at the top, 1.4.3 is thinking about why those differences might exist and forming your conclusions based on your evidence using your head. The next section of the rubric is your presentation skills. And as you can see, that's six spots on the rubric. So it's quite an important piece of your task. So the first one is your slideshow. So the way that your slideshow is put together. Now, the first one is that you've just got a slideshow, some sort of visual presentation accompanies your speech. The second one is that the visual presentation includes images and text. So you've included some images and you've got some information in there that's relevant. The next one up, which is a little bit more interesting, is 2.1.3, which says texts on slide is limited to the significant information. Now, what we mean by that is that you haven't got all of your research crammed into the slide and your text is really small. Like you've chosen 3 or 4 main dot points to include on your slide. So you've chosen the best, most important information only to put on there. Move to 2.2, which is use of voice. So the first one is that you just speak audibly, that we can understand you. 2.2.2 is that you enunciate clearly. Okay, so that's speaking slowly, speaking clearly so that your speech is engaging and we can follow along throughout. 2.2.3 is emphasizing significant information. Now, what that means is that you're using your voice to explain in more detail the information in your slideshow. And you're also using your voice, so you're enunciating, you're changing the tone of your voice or the pace of your voice to emphasize significant information. So you might notice me doing that as I'm explaining this rubric. I might be explaining like this and then say emphasize really slowly because you know that that word is important, for example. The last section of your rubric is your sourcing or your bibliography. And again, it's 5 sections of your rubric, so it's pretty important stuff. So first off, we've got the research in 3.1. So the first one is that you use sources. So you've not just pulled all this information out of your head, you've actually gone and investigated. 3.1.2 is uses multiple academic and credible sources. Now, what we mean by that is that you haven't just gone back to Wikipedia every time, you haven't gone to random blogs on the internet, you've tried to look at places like university websites, encyclopedia websites, and government websites, organization websites, and so on to find your information. So you've tried to use credible sources. The bibliography, so at the lowest level, you've just listed your sources. Now that might just be copying and pasting the websites that you used, for example, like the URL addresses. 3.2.2 is that you've got the URL address, you've got the author of who created it, the date it was created, and the title of that website. So you've just got a bit more information about each source. Then 3.2.3 is actually you're trying to have a crack at Harvard style referencing, which is a style of referencing that's used across the humanities, both in later high school years and also at university. And I'll be showing you a tutorial on a how-to do that a bit later on when it's relevant. So that's your rubric. Have a look at it, and if you've got any questions about the rubric, definitely contact your teacher. But this is what you'll be assessed on for this task. So the next thing that you're going to do is actually get your research template, which I will show you is here. So this is your research template, and this will be available to you in your Google Classroom for you to just complete as a task on Google Classroom. Here we've got the topics. So the topics are broken down into just the relevant information about your ritual and then the cultural contexts, so the 3 cultures you pick. The information in italics here is the things that you should try and find through your research. Here you would put your dot-pointed information about the research you find, and here is where you sort of start compiling that bibliography information if you can, okay? Now you might have 3 or 4 websites in this per research topic, and that's absolutely fine. If you've got any questions, contact your teacher. Otherwise, good luck. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. Thank you very much.